is from Brene Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness. It is a book that helps you understand that you belong to yourself and guides you on how to live bravely in your own wilderness. True belonging is a spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. The place of true belonging is the bravest and most sacred space you'll stand. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. Our call to courage is to protect our wild heart against constant evaluation, especially our own. No one belongs here more than you.
Good morning. It's red. I need a new battery, actually. I know, but this will go off. Will you please bring me a new battery? It's the 9-volt. So good morning and welcome while you can still hear me, and it will be distorted in a second. I'm Reverend G. To all of you who are joining us online as well, welcome. Love it that you chose to spend this time with us. And I love it that you are choosing to spend this time with us. My battery here is coming in a second. I can already hear the distortion, but that will stop the moment I put a new battery in here. Saved by the battery. Isn't this better? Well, after what Regina just read, my work here is done. Amen. Let's go home. Patty and I just got back from a week in Siesta Key in Florida. It was just wonderful. That is paradise, if you ask me. Peeling myself away from there was very difficult. But then the draw to you was very strong. So here I am, all torn. I'm back. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. And one of the books that I gifted myself on this trip is an autobiography of a fantastic actor. Her name is Viola Davis. Do you know who she is? Amazing. If you don't know who she is, then gift yourself with watching pretty much anything that she plays in. She inhabits a role. She becomes it. You don't see her anymore. And if you see movie after movie after movie with her, you forget that it's the same person. You just see the character. Incredible. So her autobiography came out and I got it and I started reading it. And you know, one of those books where it's the first paragraph and you're hooked? That's what it was. So there are, as I understand, 28 actors in this country who have an Oscar, who have a Tony and an Emmy. And of all of them, only one is African American, and it's Viola Davis. And you probably are thinking that, sure, if she made it that far and she's that talented, probably she had all the support in the world to get her there. And you couldn't be more wrong. I also watched an interview with her and Oprah. And Oprah said, we were poor and we knew it. That was Oprah's life. Viola Davis said, oh, we weren't poor, we were po, you know. No, let me go back. So Oprah said we were poor, but we didn't know it. Because, you know, everybody was the same around. Now, Viola said we were po and we knew it. They knew it because they lived in Rhode Island, and in the dead of winter, they would have no electricity, no heat. Their pipes would freeze, so they would have no water. She was a bedwetter till the age of 14. All the kids were. Violence in the house, the out of control alcoholism. Her biggest fear was always that her father would just kill her mother. Like one day he will hit her so hard that she would not make it. She broke a glass on her head. Unbelievable violence, the abject poverty, the hunger. Now, poverty like this, it's at night, rats run over your face. She had a doll she slept with, and in the morning when she woke up, she said it was one of these hard plastic, like almost porcelain face doll, very hard. And she woke up in the morning, and the rats had eaten the entire face off her doll. So they were there in the bed with her. Nobody dared go in the kitchen. The rats completely took that over. So that sort of poverty. Had no clothes, no food. She loved going to school. That was her absolute safe haven. All the children loved going to school. And she had no idea that she reeked of urine because they would wet the bed and they couldn't clean up. So they would spit on their hands and kind of clean their faces. And she had a teacher she just adored. And she always wanted to sit next to her. And then the teacher just kept pulling away. And then eventually the teacher went away, and the counselor came and pulled her aside and asked her, do you realize your odor? And has anyone ever taught you how to clean yourself? The teacher she adored couldn't stand her stench, the shame. She said that when you are so poor, you become invisible. And then when you're black and poor, you become even more invisible. Nobody lobbies for you. Nobody cares. You become just this unseen, just this filler of this earth that nobody cares about. And so that's her background. And then that woman today gives commencement speeches at prestigious universities. She's the only African American to hold an Oscar, a Tony, and an Emmy. She is incredible. And this is what she said. The history is not the past. History is the present. Because everything that happened to you, everything that happened to your parents' parents, is impacting you. It is defining you in some way. It is influencing your beingness. And if you turn away from that history, if you don't own it, it will own you. And if you don't own it, and she said, who said that human beings ought to be only good? That they ought to have only bright side, only good side. When you truly own your story, then you see it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You see the abuse, the rape, the beatings, the invisibility, the hunger, the pain, the hole that you cannot escape, the shame. You see that. And then, to balance the picture, you also see that other, the light, your capabilities, your dreams, your desires, your wishes. And only when you see it in entirety and when you are able to embrace it all, can you become all that you can be. And she still has to remind herself today that she's not Poe, because her mentality keeps taking her back there. Because history is not the past, it's the present. The stories that we are not willing to own end up owning us. Belonging. And I will come back to this. I will come back to this. So remember, the stories that we are not willing to own will end up owning us. Now let's talk a little bit about belonging. Brené Brown, who has done tremendous research, and if you go in the world, now think about this. She just released a new book. Who here knows about Brené Brown? All right, we have a few people. She just recently released the book. Thank you. Wild Heart. Before it came out in the bookstores or on audio or in any form, it was a #1 bestseller. So you know that there's something there. If people want it so badly, again, gift yourself. Go home, watch a movie by Viola Davis, buy a book by Brené Brown. Any book by Brené Brown. This is what Brené Brown says. Belonging. Belonging, our belonging, we should never negotiate it with the world. Our belonging should never be negotiated with the world. The opposite of belonging is not belonging. The opposite of belonging is fitting in. What does it mean to fit in? So it means this. I have a certain set of values, a certain set of principles. But to get your approval, I'm going to say something that is not aligned with that. That maybe not to get beaten, I will not say something that I am aligned with and condone with my silence something that I'm not aligned with. The opposite of belonging is fitting in. It requires me to compromise something fundamental about myself for your approval. So I can be part of something. It requires to compromise my most inner values and principles. And that is a terrible way to be. And who here has not done that? And the stories that we are not willing to own will end up owning us. There is a lot of shame that we hold on to around those instances when we've done just that. We compromised ourselves to fit in. And so there's shame around that. How could I do that? Why would I do that? But remember, whoever said that we can only have good and bright about us? We have it all. So instead of having that warm wash of shame come over us when we think of those instances, sit with it, face it, forgive it. Because if we don't own the story, it will keep re-injuring us, and it will keep pushing us into those instances that we so hardly try to avoid. But if we face it, if we're willing to sit with it, which is, listen, from personal experience, it's no fun, okay? So I'm not saying that this is easy. All I'm saying is the only way that healing can occur. It is the only way that healing can occur. And then, when we truly live into this understanding that my belonging, I will never negotiate with the world. Belonging is my inside job. I belong with me. I know who I am. I know who I stand for. I know why. I know my values. I know my principles. And when I don't know them, I'm willing to forgive myself so I may heal and grow and get to that place where I know it. And this is a journey. It's not a destination. So the dark side will show up again and again, and that's okay, as long as I'm willing to sit with it, forgive it, so I may heal it. So I may heal it. So the story no longer controls me because I own it. I own it. With its pain, with its shame, with the disappointment, with the letdowns, all of it, I own it. Like it happened to me. I did it. I said and I did something that is not aligned with my sense of integrity. I said and I did something that is not aligned with the kind of love that I wish to show up in this world. I did it. Now what? Will I condemn myself to constantly be that because I did it once? Or will I just own it, forgive it, heal it, and do better? Do better next time. Brené Brown says that people who understand that they belong are able to come together with others and stand for something greater than themselves. And they also have the ability to stand alone when that is what their values and principles require of them. Wow. You have the ability to come together with others in service of a greater good, and you also have the ability and the courage to stand alone. Just notice what's happening inside yourself when you hear that. And think of the times when that you were called into that courage and you couldn't take that step. And you went with the rest of them. You condoned. You just said nothing, and then notice the self-talk that is required to justify your going along. Just notice that self-talk. Well, I had to do it because otherwise I would have lost my job. I had to do it just to keep the peace. I had to do it just because. So notice that self-talk. And that self-talk, every sentence is a blade against your soul. So now, go back to those painful moments and own it, forgive it, and give yourself a chance to do it differently next time. Free yourself up for courage. Instead of weighing yourself down with shame and guilt, the paralysis of guilt and shame. So sometimes you can stand alone. Now, I happen to think that our movement, Unitarian Universalism, is uniquely shaped for us to be able to live into this courage. We're able to come together in service of a greater cause, and throughout history, we've always been able to also stand alone when that was what our inner integrity required of us. So right now, of course, there is debate. We are talking about this 8th principle. Our brothers and sisters of color are calling us into owning a story, into owning racism, into owning oppression. Look at that. History is not past, it is present. And if we're not willing to own that, how on earth can we heal it? How on earth can we do better? This is what the 8th principle says. So we covenant to journeying toward spiritual wellness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves, in our institutions. This is one of those times. This is what I believe. That this is one of those times that if we couldn't all stand together to serve this greater good, we would have to stand alone for this one. Now, I don't believe that we will be called into that courage because the movement is having the courage, but the country isn't. The country right now is doing everything to deny the story. We don't want to own up to racism, discrimination, what we've done to the Native Americans, what we've done to Earth. We do not want to own up to all these oppressions. And so we are making laws to support that. We don't want to talk about critical racism. There's book banning in the process because we are afraid to face the story, to embrace it, to own it, forgive ourselves for it, and move on, heal it. So, we must have the courage to stand alone. And we are called into that. Because the stories that we are not willing to own will end up owning us. And then, that's at the expense of our belonging. That's when we end up compromising to fit in with a society, with a majority that would have us deny our truth, our principles, our values, our integrity, our belonging is not to be negotiated with the world. It's an inside job. And we should stop telling ourselves why we don't belong, because we will always find reasons why we don't belong. Start telling ourselves the stories why we do belong. We belong. We have a right to be ourselves, our best selves, because there's no hope for greater change unless it happens here. So here's to us. Here's to us having the courage to embrace the past, the story, own it, forgive it, so we may create a different future, a better one. One that is full of Tonys and Oscars and Emmys for wherever we are called to step into this world. May we have the courage, the power, the wisdom, and the heart to be it all. And so it is.